David, he's Alex, and we are A Winner Is You. This week we are back in black and about to hit the sack. We've been too long, and we are glad to be back, landing once more in your ear holes, ready to kick off our now annual Spooktoberfest with the somewhat enigmatic Silicon Knights action-adventure game Eternal Darkness. But before that, Gubbins, how are you doing today, Alex? It's the month of the Hallows. Are you feeling suitably spooky? Does your dark, dead husk of a soul feel at home with the universe?
I feel ill, I feel cold, so I would suggest that is what the universe would want from me. As the year ends and gets darker, I feel darker.
The universe is in a perpetual want to give Alex the cold.
My daughter certainly is.
Oh, yeah.
Been snotty for the whole of her life, pretty much, it seems.
How old is she now?
Nearly three next month.
Oh, you've got another couple of years of that. Playgroup.
Oh, yeah.
Playgroup, nursery, school, just snottering all over the place all the time until she gets an immune system.
Took her to the cinema yesterday. Afterwards, we went to the disabled / baby changing toilet so that she could be forced, not physically, just coerced, let's say, to use her potty before we go home, because I'm not having that in the drive.
Try and squeeze it out.
Yeah. So I have to be like, right, well, I'm going to sit down and go for a wee. You're going to do the same before we go. And we're going to sit here till it happens. As she's sitting on the potty, which of course is on the floor of a toilet, she's just touching the floor. Just don't touch the fucking floor. Jesus Christ. And she's terrified of the noise of a hand dryer. So after I get her to wash her hands, she will refuse to dry them. So she's just like got soaking wet hands.
I guess she's also at that sort of height as well, though. Like when if she was to like stand next to a hand dryer, it's basically like a body blast of hot manky air flung at you.
Pretty much, yeah. I should understand the fact that is obviously going to be terrifying for a small child who doesn't really understand what's happening. Same when I dry her hair with a hairdryer every night. It must be horrendous.
Yeah.
Just blasted in the fucking ears. But yeah, that's the other day as well. Like she said she needed a wee, ran out, grabbed her potty by herself, brought it into the bedroom, put it down, pulled down her trousers, pulled down her knickers, pissed all over the floor, stood next to it. Like, what are you doing?
The intent was there.
What are you, the Timo Werner of pissing? You've done all the hard work. Finish the job. Christ, you've beat the man. You've got down the line. Put it in the box. Don't piss in the floor.
She couldn't do it.
Yeah. So yes, if I'll apologise to the listeners for the way that I sound, and if I keep clearing my throat, of course that'll be cut out in the edit. So I'm just apologising to David on that one. But I would say my cockles were somewhat warmed by the fact that Eternal Darkness, a game I have wanted to play for many a decade, never got round to it, and finally forced it upon the both of us, I think is a thoroughly brilliant game. Not thoroughly, a largely brilliant game.
Yes. I've got really difficult feelings about this game because I think I suspect that everything you're about to say about this game in terms of like the positives, I am going to fully be on board with you and agree with you. I would say I came away feeling that it was a game that I found it more interesting than I did fun, I think would be the way I would describe it. But it's I don't know. I guess we'll get into it. Don't want to jump around all over your schedule.
Yeah, we usually do that, so I wouldn't worry too much. It's going to be me talking about loads of bullshit. Okay. So if you want to do some thoughts now, lay them on me.
I thought it was like an incredibly interesting game, and I was chatting to Annie. This is probably way too. I've thought about this way too much, and I'm maybe being a bit dramatic. But I was chatting to Annie about this, and it feels like it's a game.
Did she watch any of it with you?
No, I think she was just trying to be polite and ask me about it without. Actually
oh, that's nice though. I don't get asked about the games I'm playing for a podcast.
So I almost in the way it's like. So I think back to things like like Predator on the movie Predator. Predator 2 specifically, when they've got the gangs and stuff going about and they're having the shootout at the start.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
Right, okay. There's a big shootout at the start of the movie. I think Mad Max and Waterworld largely fall into the same category here, in which like the costume design of the bad guys or the gangsters is almost like a cartoony, over-the-top version of how a gangster or a bad guy would dress in real life, just to sort of like almost peacock the fact that they're meant to be bad guys. And
Kind of like not quite like the Warriors, I guess, where they're dressed up like weird baseball
exactly like
players.
that as well.
Okay, right,
And I
okay.
suspect, I mean, people that know movies can probably tell me more accurately, but I suspect that sort of comes from how movies sort of grew from stage. So like if you look at
Yeah, probably.
the stage, like the costume design is over the top, and the acting movements and stuff are over the top because the people at the back of the bloody room have got to see what's happening and understand what you're
It's the
trying to
same thing with
get
wrestling.
at. Yes, exactly that.
That's why they do it in wrestling as well.
And then there's like movies like Shawshank Redemption, which sort of, I don't know, I would guess started moving towards a more modern version of what film is today. And you get people like Morgan Freeman who can conduct entire scenes with what apparently is very little acting, like very little facial movements. And he sort of acts through his eyes. And you can only do that through the sort of medium of film. You couldn't do that on a stage. And that's why you get good stage actors and you get good film actors. There's a lot of what this game I think is doing that I find extremely interesting. So like I think the magic system is incredibly in depth and actually quite engaging a lot of the time.
Mm.
I think sometimes when they run with that, when you're sitting for 15 minutes re-entering magic spells that you've already done twice before, that starts to
Yeah.
become a bit of a faff.
Yes.
So like, and then there's also this stuff like you were talking about it from a narrative perspective. Towards the end of the game, some of the character stories arcs, let's describe them as that. I felt like I was doing a lot of busy work. However, it fit with what they were shooting for, so it made the story made sense for the story. But I can't honestly say I had was having other. I mean, you being there made it much more palatable. But I can't say actually playing the game towards the end where you're going through all those teleports. I can't
That's
say
the
I had
worst. Yeah,
fun
that's
doing
the
that
worst part of the game.
particularly, and it
No,
just felt like
no.
busy work. And then there's the Indiana Jones bit as well, where there was just a lot of back and forth. And like we speak about things, and this is the thing where I know like I'm going to contradict myself, but this is just how it made me feel. Is like in games like Dead Space, I'll laud having to go back to places you were before during different parts of the game is a good thing because it makes the Ishimura feel alive and like a living, breathing character within the game. Whereas I felt like the back and forth in this game, I would realize I would have to go all the way back, like run all the way back to the start of the level to open a door, and I'd just be like, "Oh, for fuck's sake, I can't be asked going all the way back." And I kept expecting it to give me a shortcut, and it didn't. So yeah, so a long story short, like it's really fun with the voice acting and things like that because actually for that era, the voice acting is really very good.
Apparently, their previous game on PS1, Blood Omen: Legacy of Kain, had really good voice acting in it as well,
Yeah,
which is what
okay.
alerted the industry to them
Yeah.
and what inspired Nintendo to sign them up.
Okay. And so like, and I think like when you were talking about the people that were in the game, the people that are attached to the game, that
The Metal Gear Solid
yeah,
cast, yes.
knowing that actually makes it a much more interesting proposition as well because I'm just like, oh, I can see these things and I can see why people would sort of give Silicon Knights the keys to the Metal Gear Solid franchise to go and do it because you can see the sort of building blocks in place and that they're doing the sort of weird things. The sanity meter's really fun at times.
It's brilliant.
But I always knew what it was doing. Apart from once, it did catch me out.
Yeah,
but
and obviously it's a very little consequence after it's kicked in as well. The effects are fun and cool, but they never actually do anything other than confuse you and then restart what you were doing anyway.
So to sort of draw my diatribe to a close, that's kind of how I felt about the game in a nutshell. It was fun and interesting. I can see what it's doing and appreciate it. But I think some of the time playing it was more of a sort of, oh, this is interesting rather than this is fun, I think is how I would describe it.
Yeah. I don't think I can have too many arguments with most of that. I especially agree with it's the City of the Ancients, those parts, isn't it? You're talking about the where you have to create these I guess parts of a magic spell, points of a 9-point magic spell using giant towers that overlook the City of the Ancients. To have that repeated when it was already the the longest and least interesting part of the game.
Oh yeah, just do it again.
Yeah, here it is again, but you don't do combat afterwards. Now you do some very, very loose definition of what a puzzle is. That was, yeah, it really dragged out the end of the game, which is what you don't want to have dragged out. I think,
yeah, maybe that's partly it, is because it's the final taste you'll have of the game, isn't it? So like, if
yeah,
it's a negative taste, I don't know, maybe my brain leaves a more negative perception of the game than it actually had, because I did have fun for most of the game.
yeah, me too. But as you alluded to a minute ago as well, that we talked about yesterday, it does make sense that that's what
Yeah.
she would have to do. That's what Edward would have to do initially to take down the city, or at least drain it of its powers. And that's what Alex should have to do to summon an ancient. It has to be the biggest possible magic spell you can make. It's just the delivery and the execution of actually having to do that is very, very monotonous.
Especially because of the sort of premise they established throughout the game of how you create magic and cast magic. It had to be like that, especially because they're talking about the size of the spell. It had to be an onerous undertaking to go and do it, or it wouldn't have worked and it wouldn't have fit with the rest of the magic system throughout the whole game. You're totally right. It had to be that way.
It feels like something. Sorry, go on.
No, I don't really have anything else. I was just going to say, it just felt like a chore at times. At that point.
Yeah, it feels like it's often something we go back to on this show, where we talk about modern games being handholdy and older games not being handholdy, and there's almost like a separation of mind where you go like, oh well, modern games are too handholdy, so they're shit. And then you go back and play an older game and you think, hold my bloody hand, I don't know what I'm doing. There is no middle ground that's ever been achieved as far as I can tell. I felt like I was doing more spell preparation in this game than in bloody Witcher 3 for any combat.
Yeah.
Like, what am I doing here? Like, especially if I'm getting attacked by enemies of a very specific color, I would typically go out of the room again, go, right, okay, before I go back in this room, I'm going to put a shield on, and then I'm going to enchant all my weapons, then I'm going to take them on.
But you also don't have enough magic, so you've got to run in circles for a little while you build up your magic.
Give us something to replenish our mana, please. Come on. I mean, you can use the recover spell, but it doesn't really work out very well.
I tried to use it, and whenever I would think, oh, that exists, I never had enough magic to actually cast the spell. So how does that work? You spend magic and you get back more than
and you get a very minor amount more, yeah. What's hilarious to me, looking at it, the magic system in general, is that the game has a very in-depth magic system that can be utilized for some really cool stuff that will benefit you, and you'll actually see the benefits, especially in taking on enemies and things like that. That whole system, which is quite basic on the surface, is only ever explained to you with a painting on the wall of Alex's granddad's mansion that just has some colors and lines, and then you're supposed to and not only are you supposed to understand what that's trying to tell you, you're then supposed to remember that almost every juncture to attack enemies of the opposite color, or if you need to find a door, if you need to open a door with a symbol on it, you're not matching the symbol, are you? Fuck. So you're going to reveal that invisible door.
You have to match
apart from when you've got to put the sword in. Yeah. So when you've got to enchant a sword and put it in a slot, you've got to have the same color as the slot wants. But if you've got to try and reveal an invisible door, then you've got to do the opposite color of the slot. It's
if you're making the zoo that you make at the end, you've got to do it the right color.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, which you obviously didn't do at first, because you thought, like the game had been telling you the whole time, well, I've got to do the dominant color, so to speak. There's also the bit with the effigies, where I tried to match them to the color that was on the painting that was in front of the slot. Then it just summoned whatever those enemies are over and over and over again, like 10 times, until I realized I had to do something different. So yes, it's not fiddly, it's just inconsistent, but probably consistent within the game's ideas and logic, but that logic doesn't translate to the player very well.
It's exactly it. It makes sense within its own logic. It just doesn't bother to ever explain its own logic to you at any point. So you're sort of left to try and just work that out.
Yeah, I mean, I could never really tell whether putting a red shield up against green enemies was doing them more damage or
Yeah, I
not.
couldn't
I
either.
could never,
I
or
just
would
sort
I
of
have been better doing a green one to
yeah.
block their magic? I don't know.
I defaulted in that to just think it's probably safer to just do because I've got the green. I don't know what you call it, like
You picked the green artifact, didn't
yeah.
you? So that was
So
your dominant color
yeah,
apparently for the game.
which meant it's fired a lot of blue at me. So I thought more often than
Mm.
not, it's safer to have the blue,
Yeah,
have the
ours was
green,
yeah.
if that makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
went
Yeah.
with that.
Apparently that does act as something of a difficulty measure. I think if you did pick, as I suggested last night, if you did pick the red one, apparently enemies do more physical damage. I think when you had those
Ah,
things like those, what were those things called? Like the big
what
things with
if
the
I did it on
wings,
easy mode then?
the vampires.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, in fact, they would make the floor go like a certain color.
yeah,
So you were just losing magic, I
yeah.
believe. I picked the green artifact, so I was losing sanity, which
Oh
is probably
yeah,
the most acceptable thing to lose.
probably.
But if it was red, I'm assuming you're just going to lose health, which
Fuck
that
me. Yeah,
sucks.
yeah. Oh my god.
It's interesting to note as well that if you save, what is it? It says that at the end, it's like, do you want to record your feats for human history or
Yeah, in
something?
the annals of time.
After you,
Yeah, okay.
so if you create that save file, I think I think it's relative to that. When you create that save file of the completed game of a certain, when you've picked a certain artifact, apparently you can never play that. Sorry, you cannot play that artifact as a choice again until you've done the other two in separate playthroughs. Only then can you go back and pick the same one again. So you have to
Interesting.
do one of the three each time
Yeah.
because there's only slight. I can only think of slight differences in it. In that you will have different cutscenes between Pius and his chosen ancient. You had the blue testicle thing. I had the green, like wobbly armed lady.
Yeah, so the monk
And then the
died
fight
in
at the
both
end.
ways because of
Oh
us.
yeah, sorry, yeah, the
But
monk died. Yes, but his head got splattered by telekinesis
yeah,
with mine,
so
which was
he
amazing.
just got stood on for me, which was incredibly funny. But I wonder, yeah, that there may be quite similar deaths. Just yeah, like the mode of transport to that death is different.
Yeah, the fight at the end of mine was way better than the one at the end of
Oh,
yours.
was it?
Because the red guy was the one I summoned, and he was just like a big hulking. He looked like Dodongo or something from Zelda. He was like a big bastard with giant claws, just like cutting it in half and twatting it in the face.
Oh, mine was a
Mine was
bit
quite the
weird.
physical guy. Yours was, yeah, and then the green one was kind of I don't know. I guess I guess it was making the other one go insane a little bit. I don't really understand what the green one was doing as an
Oh
attack.
yeah, maybe that's what it was doing. Yeah, maybe it was sort of channeling its. Yeah, that makes sense. Because
Mm,
the blue one, which I was fighting, was very magic based, wasn't it? In its attacks.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Apart from when it killed Chumley Warner and stood on him.
Yeah.
sometimes you just go route one with it.
Yeah. Yeah. You do. Have you seen pictures of my enemy? Did you see him at any point?
Who?
That guy, the guy with the big testicle that stood on the monk.
I saw it when you were fighting
Oh, you did.
against him in your final battle last night.
It's
Yeah,
really odd looking that thing.
yeah. It's like it is like a jellyfish with a big
Yeah,
bollock in the
yeah.
middle.
Whereas the other
They all
ones
look
that I've seen-
really weird.
Yeah, they do.
You didn't enjoy that last bit, did you?
the
The weird CGI fighting that
I
just
was
didn't really make a lot of
it
sense.
was odd. Yeah, it was just really strange that you were having this sort of physical fight down on Earth, and then there was just this space battle going on between space monsters that was broadly mirroring what was happening on Earth for some reason.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I didn't get it. And then yes, they just thought, oh, my monster's dangerous as well, so let's just put him in a box. And then they're like, oh, that's that done. And then just
Yeah, I'm going to
glossed
bind
over it.
myself to him to banish it or whatever
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, or I don't know if that means that she can now control the monster,
Oh, maybe.
and then by controlling it, she just decided
That's
to make
like
it sleep for a long time.
Commander Shepard in one of the endings in Mass Effect 3, where you can just sort of take over the. What are they called?
Yeah,
What are they called?
the begin with an R. Is it?
The big
ro-
things. Anyway, you can take them. You can just sort of take control and make them wander off.
Yeah, it's only one step above giving all the aliens in War of the Worlds the cold, and that's it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm apparently stronger than all of those aliens,
Oh,
as
yeah,
I'm not
you're
dying
handling
at this
it.
current moment. Yeah.
Anyway,
Shall I
let's
lay some shit on you?
yeah, let's dive in and let's hear about this.
All right.
I've been looking forward to this.
So the game was released in America on 24th of June 2002. It's a result mainly of Nintendo in the GameCube era desperately trying to draw back some of that third-party support. They basically they completely hemorrhaged during the N64's life. So they struck a deal with Silicon Knights, who are a Canadian studio. And as I said earlier, their previous console debut was Blood Omen Legacy of Kain, which is like a top-down adventure game, kind of original Zelda style, but very PC, 90s PC looking ass game. It's about a vampire, but apparently the atmosphere and the voice acting were really good, and it got a lot of people's attention. It got quite good reviews, won awards. But they lost the rights to that to Crystal Dynamics, who was the publisher at the time.
Right, okay.
Quite messy proceedings apparently, so they were not able to develop a sequel for it, and they had to then again start another new IP, which worked perfectly for Nintendo, who were they wanted some more mature stuff. I mean, they had some mature stuff towards the end, I guess, of the N64, but for the GameCube, they wanted a more mature outlook to try and drag people from PlayStation back to their platform to stop being this kiddie friendly appearance that they have had for their whole career, really, not career, the whole lifetime.
That up particularly.
No, I mean now they're after the hentai aficionados, so they've kind of gone into a weird offward direction there. So it's initially developed for the N64, and they showed it at E3 1999, and then they moved it to the GameCube. The demo itself that they showed at that E3 is insanely impressive for an N64 game.
Yeah, I need to.
Apparently I'll send you a video later. It apparently it needed like a bespoke 256K cartridge to even run it, and Nintendo was so dubious that this was even possible. They asked to inspect it after E3 because they were in disbelief that this type of thing could actually have been developed and run on their console. But apparently, yeah, all legit. But they were so impressed that they decided, right, we're gonna take that away from N64, shelve that, put it on the GameCube. It will come out in the launch window. It will be the first mature rated game on the system, and it's going to be one of the flagship titles, and we're just going to run with it. They obviously brought in Miyamoto and Iwata from Nintendo to to produce it. And they were obviously very, very behind this game.
I'm having a quick look just now at the N64 gameplay. It's remarkably similar to the game. Just
yeah, it is.
A bit choppier. Like the layout of the levels looks similar. What's happening, I recognize that from the game. They've even got that. Didn't always work perfectly well, but the sort of targeting system.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, yeah, that's really awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's very impressive they pulled that off. But yeah, Nintendo just wanted it to be utilized even further.
Do you think they just did a straight port then? Almost, because
they can't have completely got rid of it. They must have reused a lot of stuff. At least I don't know, maybe the engine. I don't know, because part of me thinks that having seen that N64 demo looking so impressive, and then knowing that it got shelved and put onto the GameCube, part of me does think that perhaps some limitations from the N64 or the original engine or the original code lingered, and that's why we got four levels, effectively four areas to explore across the ages, rather than distinctly unique ones for each character. That's probably partly a narrative device as well, to kind of repeat the areas. But some of them felt like they didn't need to be exactly the same. The worst level for me was the Forbidden City one, the one in the temple. I really didn't enjoy. Not enjoy, but I really found that one to be the most kind of confusing in its layout. There was often lots of different ladders to climb up and lots of different holes to drop down. Long corridors. It was nowhere near as good as the mansion itself or the cathedral, which were my two favorite ones. And
I'd fully agree with that. I really, really enjoyed the cathedral, and for the most part, enjoyed both of those sort of stories. The one with the monk, and then the World War one.
Yeah,
the boss at the end of the World War One guy aside, I think those two are my favorite.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but it felt like the busy work was at its highest in the temple.
Yeah,
especially when you've got like the architect and you're having to go in and survey the rooms.
Yeah,
for the building of the flesh pillar or whatever it was at the end, and then you've got to blow up the bridge later on as the old fireman guy. But yeah, the tone and narrative of the game are quite obviously inspired by things like Lovecraftian horror, but they're also inspired by something called the Eternal Champion character concept, which was created in the early 90s by a British author, I think, called Michael Moorcock. So, oh, careful, don't click off of that. The Eternal Champion concept is effectively something that it was novels and short stories that took place in a shared multiverse, aka an array of interconnected parallel universes, many layered dimensions, alternative worlds. And the Eternal Champion is appointed as like a pointed paladin of balance, effectively, bound to exist in each and every world and age of the multiverse so that law and chaos are perpetually kept in check. He does not know his role or struggles against it, and he never succeeds. And all of the Eternal Champions are implied to be different facets or incarnations of one semi-conscious being. Most of them are peerless fighters and generals who have unbreakable bond with a sentient chaos-aligned weapon, the Black Sword, which in this case was the what was it called? What was the sword called?
Pass.
Hold on. Let's find out what it was.
I feel like by the end I had two versions of that sword. There was the sort of one I was running that Alex was running about with throughout most of the game and not needing, and then there's the one that gets.
I think that might have
to your house.
Yeah, I feel like that's the same one. What's the name of the sword? Load, please. The Gladius.
That's it.
Yeah. So, and I guess that all of that stuff clearly lifted directly into this game and then sprinkled with some Lovecraftian tentacle shit. But the fact that they've also got Eternal in the name as well, just like right on Alex Roivas's nose.
Is the Gladius the sword, or do you use like the end boss's weapon own sword against him at the end?
I believe you do, yes.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Because he's too busy with his big skeleton staff, isn't he? I really like the idea that you begin this game playing as the end antagonist.
Yeah, really, really good.
So, Silicon Knights then, sort of just carrying on the legacy of them before we get back into the game again. They carried on for a while. They've gone out of business now. I can't remember when it was that they went properly defunct, but it wasn't a massive amount of time after this. There was quite a lot of controversy around the game's director, Dennis Dyack, as well. Firstly, stemming from this game X-Men Destiny they made. Well, first of all, they made Too Human, which is largely panned Xbox 360
I need to go
game.
listen to that. I'm sure in one of Jason Schreier's books, he talks about Too Human.
He might do.
I think this is his. Did he have something? Was Dennis Dyack the game developer that used to be a baseball player, or is that someone else?
No, that was somebody else. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
I'm not sure who that was.
But
yeah,
I'll need to go back and listen to that because I've got a feeling like they were making people like move across the country and saying they were going to buy them houses and things like that.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Bust and found that all their houses were wrapped up in the company, so basically everyone lost their job and their home and never got paid. It was a total mess. So
I don't think that was Too Human. I can't remember what that was.
Yeah. I remember it was an RPG.
Oh, yes, I know the one you mean now.
The name of the game is on the tip of my tongue.
It begins with A, is it?
Yeah, I want to say
Kingdom of Amalur.
Yeah, that's it. Kingdom of
Amalur.
That's
the one. Do you often find that when you're trying to remember Kingdom of Amalur, all you get coming up into your head is Dragon's Dogma?
Yeah,
because I do. Yeah. So after they made that, they were desperate to try and regain their reputation. So they made this game X-Men Destiny, obviously in collaboration with Marvel and Activision. Dog shit, apparently. Everybody hated it, but the controversy arose from, well, first of all, from the fact that the game sucked, and second of all, there was accusations that they had reallocated funds they'd been given to other projects, and therefore the game's quality dropped because he wasn't solely focusing development on that. He came out and said that was not true, and that they actually spent more money than they were given. They spent like $2 million more than Activision gave them on the game, and so there was a bit of a spat there. You know, he became a bit unreliable as a human, a bit of a Peter Molyneux of the Canadian development scene. They also left Nintendo, and he said to Kotaku something along the lines of they were finally out from under the oppressive nature of Nintendo as a publisher. They wanted to carry on making mature games like Eternal Darkness, which sold like 500,000 copies worldwide, which is not good.
No.
So potentially Nintendo thought maybe it's just not worth having these mature titles on our system. We don't necessarily want that. I guess at this point they were back in the Wii era, and again, probably focusing more on casual market, family-friendly stuff. They just kind of dropped him.
Yeah.
He left Silicon Knights after that, after the whole X-Men Destiny fiasco, and set up a new developer called Precursor Games. And they tried to kickstart a sequel to this called Shadow of the Eternals, which I backed, but it did not actually meet the Kickstarter goal.
That's a shame.
Yeah, so they basically said that they were all going on a big hiatus, and that was 2013 that died. So that game, unfortunately, is probably never going to come to light.
No.
But maybe the problem with that is that Diak had to come out at the inception of this Kickstarter and sort of say things like, "Oh, I'm sorry for things that I've done and said in the past. Like I've made mistakes, but you can trust me now, and you know we're definitely going to do what we can to make this work." But
so it's a bit of a
never did.
It's interesting when sort of the famous head or the name attached to companies and groups becomes a bit toxic, and they just become a difficult proposition to trust, I guess. I'm thinking of like other examples, like Peter Molyneux's a good example. Randy Pitchford is probably very much in amongst that just now. Yeah, it's just it's a shame for everyone else involved in the project that I don't know. I feel like they should have taken a back seat away from the public role. Something like either remove themselves from the project or just sort of gone away into the background somewhere. Not sure how you.
It's tough, isn't it? Because they're the reason you would invest in it, because they are the face of something that you were attracted to in the past. Keiji Inafune, key example of that with Mighty Number 9. Oh, that guy was a big part of Mega Man. This is going to be another Mega Man, and then it was terrible, and people started to blame him, and his reputation was completely tarnished as a result. And he's kind of hidden off in the background now. And I guess Diak has probably, I imagine, he's probably left games development, or at least has gone, underground for a while anyway.
I'm almost like sort of endlessly fascinated by creative dynamics like that. I mean, like, I'm trying to think of other examples, like
Ken Levine.
Ken Levine's another one. I mean, this is a controversial one, but Kojima to an extent, like when people were talking about how Konami were being oppressive and holding them back and things like that, and then like, I don't know, people like that walking simulator game they made. What's it called again?
Yeah, they do. Death Stranding.
Yeah, but I just feel like a lot of that, like sometimes like Kojima Unleashed maybe wasn't quite. Like sometimes people need an editor. Sometimes people need.
It's Vince Russo in WCW all over again.
Yeah. Sometimes people need a box to operate within, and that's how you get the best work out of them. Just like sort of removing everything that's ever held them back or constrained them is not always the best thing for the piece of art. I don't know. I don't know.
Totally agree. But yeah, that's kind of the sad, I guess, fallout from something that, I mean, it's unquestionably very, very ambitious. Certainly from all standpoints, really, from the number of characters that you get to control, the underlying influences that it has, the atmosphere of it, the systems that were patented because of how good they were, which apparently that lapsed like 3 years ago now. It's public domain, the Sanity system, so maybe we'll get it again somewhere else. Yeah. The acting quality, this game was crazy ambitious for the time, largely hit what it attempted to do. But unfortunately, 92% Metacritic scores or whatever it is that it's got, didn't translate to sales and didn't translate to a promising future for Silicon Knights, who basically shat the bed and died.
I think it makes it a bit of a big shame, actually, because like you're saying, I think if you were to sort of take a step back and imagine their initial project meetings and what they wanted to achieve with the game, I think they probably hit most of the finished product they had. They probably nailed most of that.
Yeah.
It's yeah. I don't know. It's just one of those things, isn't it? Do you think it's held back by the platform it was on? The audience for that game perhaps isn't on the GameCube, because like you say, it was and the audience that were there were looking for different games. They weren't looking for serious adult games. They were looking, because the people that were looking for those types of titles were on the PlayStation 2. If that game had come out on the PS2 or
Yeah.
the Xbox, I wonder if it would have sold better. I wonder what the marketing
Potentially
was
on the
like for this.
PS2, yeah. But then you see other games that are on PS2 that have a similar ilk, things like Haunting Ground from Capcom, which is, you know, another kind of unique survival horror game that's, you know, very sought after these days as a hidden gem of the system, but because that didn't sell well either. So I really don't know, because you're right that the Nintendo launch lineup for the GameCube was largely like, oh, it's Wave Race and it's Monkey Ball and stuff like that. So it was kind of an outlier in that early stage. You know, as I said earlier, being the first M-rated game, then yes, I guess the audience probably wasn't there, and Nintendo were trying to claw back that audience with a game that is quite high concept, really. And then they've come out and said it specifically, like, we didn't want to make a Resident Evil clone that's a schlocky B horror zombie game. We wanted to make I think they called it a psychological thriller rather than anything else.
It probably is. Are we just back to the sad reality that horror games are niche in terms of sales?
Certainly were then. This is probably on the lead up to horror games don't sell. Let's stop making them and make everybody shoot stuff.
Oh yeah, that's why we've gone over this before, but that's why Resident Evil ended up in the state it was in for a while.
On that console is where it began, with Resident Evil 4, really.
Yeah.
And before that, the Devil May Cry attempt at it, where they were going to go even further into
I don't know. I would
action
love to know
insanity.
how it's seen as a genre these days, because even the Dead Space remake is for all intents and purposes, a fucking fantastic game, but it didn't sell, and we'll probably never see a Dead Space 2 remake because the Dead Space 1 didn't sell.
Yeah.
It's just the of horror games, and also probably why it's taken us 10 years to hear about an Alien Isolation 2. That is like the cultist of cult classics. Is that game, and I don't know what the sales are for that game, but I bet you didn't do gangbusters because it's a horror game. I think people are too scared of them, and just
I think potentially that's probably done steady numbers, I think, over the years as people have continued to find it.
Of long tails does that, because that every Halloween that game is the one that pops up.
Yeah. So but maybe initial numbers is all they really cared about, and they weren't strong enough. I don't think didn't it get like a 4 from IGN or something that absolutely killed its momentum. There they go again.
It reviewed incredibly mixed. I remember that.
Right, so the premise of Eternal Darkness, if you have not played it, which is going to make this podcast is going to be so like impenetrable for somebody who's not played Eternal Darkness.
You can't even. I don't know if you can really come along for the ride, but we'll try.
Yeah. So the narrative of the game basically switches between two phases. The main phase is focusing on the series of chapters that take place where you take control of a new character and a new era of the world every time. And then the second phase is like an intermission, effectively, where you explore Alex Roivas's grandfather's or family's mansion to try and find these pages of the Tome of Eternal Darkness that will take you to the next chapter. You've got 12 playable characters, 4 different locations from all different periods of time. And each of the characters that you take control of, they are different in terms of the game's 3 main parameters, which is health, sanity, and magic. They all have different weapons as well, mostly different weapons as well, that will be time period appropriate. So people from pre-colonial era will have swords and maces and torches, and then later on you're getting things like machine guns and shotguns and elephant guns or whatever it is.
Oh, I love that gun.
And the combat therefore takes place with this limb targeting system. I've sent you the email. this limb targeting system where you hold down the R button and then you can decide to either attack the head, arms, or torso of one of your enemies with it, whatever it is that you've got. I really liked that idea. I know that it doesn't necessarily work perfectly, but taking a head off an enemy so that it can't see you anymore and just stands there flailing around, or smashing the arms off one of them so that all they can do is walk up to you and like square up to
Yeah.
you in the face,
It works.
but
It
actually
works
do no
surprisingly well.
damage.
Yeah.
Yeah, you liked
Yeah.
it. I mean, I think fundamentally, there's other than, you know, as you said earlier, the slightly fiddly nature of having to do the magic and set all the magic up. I think this game plays perfectly well. There's nothing about its overall general gameplay that feels aged. What
No,
do you
not at
think?
all. I think there's like quality of life stuff that you would maybe change, like the overuse of the B button. I think on the GameCube
Yes.
controller. But yeah, I totally agree with you. For the most part, it plays exactly like you would want it to.
Yeah, having the B button as the button in which you interact with things, but also cancel things and reload
Yeah.
was an odd choice.
Do you know probably the only aspect of this game that I think didn't age well is some of the dialogue, like maneuvering around the dialogue menus. So like you would have to go up to a book, press B to look at the book, scroll down, press B again, then press B again to pick it up. Rather than it was just like a lot of steps in pressing B, if that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. And if you so by the notion of it being B is not only look at this and then pick it up afterwards, to stop doing that, to stop reading the book, to effectively cancel out of that because your B button is relegated or has been altered to be the accept button rather than cancel. Analog stick away from wherever you are will cancel out of it.
Yeah.
So there were times when you wouldn't notice, like you might accidentally lean your thumb on the analog stick and move your character away. I wouldn't realize I could even have picked it up.
No, but
And
it would also do things like, do you want to pick this book up? Yes or no?
yeah,
And
you'd have to scroll the dialogue down with the left analog stick
yeah,
to even see
yeah,
that
exactly.
option.
But there was also like, in literal terms there was, but in sort of the game terms there was no option to not pick up the book. So like if you went up to the book and went, oh no, I don't want to pick that up, and so all right, so we'll just sit in this menu for the rest of time. Like
Yeah,
it's not a question. You have to pick the book up if you want to progress the game, and I don't know why it
yes.
kept asking me that.
Gaming is very much a medium of leading questions, right?
You can pick whatever, you can pick yes or no as long as your answer is yes.
Yeah,
Totally up to
yeah.
you.
Because if it's no, oh, you don't want to proceed. Then cool, enjoy this room
Yeah.
forever. But yeah, combat I found better than I had expected it to be based on watching videos of this
Yeah.
over the years, thinking, oh, that looks a little bit clunky, but not clunky at all. You don't have to have tank controls the way that you would do in the Resident Evil games
Nope.
of the time and slightly after this time as well. You are more in the lines of the alternate controls that they added to Resident Evil HD remaster that we played
that's
earlier on
good.
in the year, where you're just freely moving around. Although, yeah, you're holding a button to run, but that's expected, I guess.
Yeah.
Then you have puzzles. Mostly those puzzles manifest themselves, or at least on the higher concept of those puzzles, are in the mansion with Alex, that are typically solved after like one of her ancestors has acquired some new magical power that you can then utilize with Alex in the present to access new rooms. But there are some puzzles within the levels themselves. They're not necessarily ever really like a proper brain teaser. They're either very obvious or they're so obtuse that you have to look it up because you'd have never figured it out on your own, which is not necessarily the way these puzzles should be designed if you want to be praised for them.
The one thing I had to look up that was absolutely ridiculous, and it's I don't know. I'll accept it as a David problem, but I couldn't for the life of me see it with my own eyes. Is when you're in the cathedral as, is it the monk you're in the cathedral as first? There's the basement sort of at the top. I can't, like when I'm standing beside those stairs, that just looks like a like square or a rectangular ring of banisters. Like I could not see the steps down, and I couldn't figure out how to go. how to do it, because even the guide.
Oh, in the main behind
Yeah.
the altar. Yeah, same. Yeah. I had to Google how to get
yeah.
out of that room because it kept talking about the podium as well. I was
Yeah.
like, I'm at the podium,
Yeah.
but I wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That had me absolutely baffled. I'd still be there to this day if it wasn't for the internet and guides.
Which we used a guide by good old Cyric Z, who is the apparent darling of the Yakuza fandom, as he's written a game FAQs guide for every single Yakuza game.
Is there a better way than just manually scrolling through those game facts guides? Is there because it's a PDF? You know how some PDFs you can sort of jump around. You can't do that. I guess in those ones,
Control F is your only friend there.
Right. Okay. Because those guys are excellent. It's just they're not particularly fun to maneuver around.
Yeah, it's a shame, really, because things like wiki guides or, God forbid, IGN guides are typically separated correctly with different pages on chapters. But the worst thing about IGN guides is half of the time they haven't got anything on some of the pages. And it's like middle parts.
Yeah.
So you'll go to chapter 6, this still needs text. Click here to contribute. And then chapter 7, fine. Absolutely full of text. What the fuck happened? But yes, so game facts are basically just like a fucking huge wall of text that leans back into how old that website is. GameSpot owns now, isn't it? But
I guess to a large extent, it's probably similarly true for IGN. It's just maybe it's just the layout that feels it. But I particularly enjoy game facts guides because you can tell the people that have written the guides just fucking love the game they're writing about.
Yeah, there's often jokes in there that they try and add in.
I even find the spelling mistakes and wrong words endearing.
Yeah. Didn't you always used to tell me that Colin Moriarty used to be big game facts writing guy?
Got a lot of Mega Man ones, I think, or would be him.
Oh, has he?
Yeah.
Nice.
That's how he came up.
Game Facts used to do this amazing thing that I'm almost certain we tried to rip off, but they did this thing almost every year. I think it was where they had a character tournament, like a greatest games character sort of battle royale tournament. And every day they would have a new poll of so this will be Link versus Sephiroth today, and then tomorrow it's going to be Donkey Kong versus Master Chief. And you'd vote on it, and then the next day it would be different rounds, and it'd be a tournament system. And I used to absolutely live for that shit. I'd bookmark that as my homepage. Every day I'd be logging on I've got to vote again. I loved that premise. They probably don't do that anymore because why would you need to? There's social media that can do that, or there's YouTube videos that do it themselves. But I used to love the old Game Facts character battle thing every year.
I didn't realize Game Facts was more than a Game Facts. I was the only thing I've ever.
Yeah, it's mostly just a forum as well, isn't it?
Okay. Maybe need to do that again.
There's something heartwarming about the fact that Game Facts still exists in its original. They've not updated that website really at all. All of it still has that same crappy, typewriter style text, and all of the game walkthroughs are still the same thing. It's just here's the whole thing on one giant web page. Good luck. Scroll through.
Get scrolling, mate.
Find it. Yeah. Which you would probably need to do for the magic system in this game, which we've said already is quite in depth and pretty cool to utilize. However, doesn't really get explained to you that well. It's fundamentally that you are selecting a point system for how many points of runes or how many runes you will use in your magic system to cast the spell. You will collect these runes from random parts of levels. There will be a 3, a 5, or a 7-point spell, and of course a 9-point spell when you're using fucking towers above a city to cast your runes. You will select those runes, so they will have things like protect or dispel or enchant and stuff like that to do with self or enemies or whatever. You will align those, and then you will choose their color as well. That can be changed every time you cast the spells. So if you were going to enchant your weapon with a 3-point spell, you would use the runes that are to do with something to do with protect an item or something like that. You would then choose which item you were going to enchant with that spell, and then you would choose the color which was going to be enchanted onto that item. And then you can use that color to fight against the dominant color of the game that will be chosen by what you pick in the first chapter, where you play as Pius Augustus, this Roman centurion back in 26 BC in ancient Persia. So at the end of the first chapter of this game, you choose as him an artifact of the ancients. He then turns into some fucking crazy immortal zombie that is then hell bent on bringing this ancient to Earth to destroy it. Whatever color that is, you're mostly going to be using magic, or you're going to be coming up against enemies that follow that magic and puzzles, and you're going to want to have the magic system or the magic color that will do the most damage or is dominant against that color. Very much Pokemon style, blue beats red, red beats green, green beats blue. That kind of
paper, scissors.
Rock, paper, exactly that. So you can, when you first start picking up runes, they will be largely indecipherable. They will just be a really weird name with like a brief, like a one-word bracket description, like I've been saying already. Things like dispel or whatever, or recover. You can't necessarily use those until you find this script that actually contains the spell itself. Then you create them based off what the script tells you to use. But you can experiment with the runes that you've got before you actually know what they do, and you can craft these spells and cast them if you get lucky or you know what to do beforehand. I'm sure that's confused basically everybody listening who hasn't played the game, and it is confusing. There's no two ways about it. I had to look up what the fuck I was doing, especially once you start powering them up later on.
Yeah.
Like, it just becomes a little bit overwhelming.
Yeah, it does.
It's definitely a state where you can get used to it, and you'll think like, right, I get this now. Towards the end of the game, you will totally get it. You can use it to your advantage, and it is cool, but early, like, baby steps of that are minuscule.
I think it links back to what we were saying before. For me, it's just, it has its own logic to it, and once you work out the logic to it, there is a sort of coherence to it. Like when you know the spells and you're like, oh, that does that, and then you're looking at what you're, oh my god, itchy nose. You know what you're looking like. You can see what's going into the spell spots. You're like, oh, I understand how that's got to that stage. Like I say, just the game just does not like, I understand the magic in this game because you told me about it, not the game.
Yeah, and I understand it because I read the game facts about it.
Yeah,
because I just had no idea what I was doing at first. Like, I couldn't even get, like, for most of this game I had to have the picture of the fucking painting above the fireplace that has the colors, the little color triangle on it, until I gave myself the whole Pokemon chat. This is Pokemon, mate.
You went better than me because I just went sort of left to right. So if you're looking at the spell colors on the spell screen, the color to the right of whatever color it was is the color that would beat it. There it is.
So those watching on YouTube can see the picture that I had to have saved in my photos throughout the entire playthrough of the game.
I assumed that at some point, because of that picture, that
you were going to get purple?
I was going to get purple, and it's like the all-conquering color, but no, it doesn't bother. I don't know what that purple dot's about.
No idea. I think there are potentially some things that are purple in the game, and therefore nothing is strong against them.
Well, there's
I suppose
floor that you've got to inexplicably sneak across at the end of the game.
Doesn't tell you anything about that either, does it? It's just, it's going to keep fucking with your sanity until you figure it out. Which leads nicely on to the sanity system, which is probably this game's chief USP. So the development team borrowed inspiration for that apparently from Edgar Allan Poe. No shit, it's the very first thing of the game before you even get the Silicon Knights or Nintendo logo. It's just, here's some Edgar Allan Poe cryptic shit.
The worst thing about that is I've watched, I think I said this either to you in chatting or on podcast, probably on podcast, that I sometimes quite like to fall asleep, like find like a 2-3 hour discussion on a particular game and just like watch it over a few nights when I'm going to sleep. And the worst thing about that game is I found the Eternal Darkness ones almost impossible to watch because every person that has made a video about that game feels the need to speak in some voice like this when they start reading, and they all start by
you have probably watched one of the videos I was watching in the lead up to making my notes for this.
Feel sick, like with like stomach squirming. It's like, are you trying to be sexy? Are you trying to be like, what are you doing? I don't like this in my ear when I'm trying to sleep. So I can.
And there's also there also seems to be like this desperate attempt from all of them to be profound and knowledgeable.
All try, rather than just fucking talk about the game.
So we're not going to do that to you, dear listener. You didn't get that from a winner, and you already know it. That's why you're here. Exactly. But yes, I've never read any fucking Edgar Allan Poe. I've read some of Lovecraft, and then I got bored of reading it, so I got it on audiobook, and then I got bored of that because it's all just racism, homophobia, and people going mental.
You'll know about the Raven. Is it called the Raven? That's his famous poem.
Edgar Allan Poe. Yes, of
Yeah.
course. Yes, it's a good episode of The Simpsons Halloween special. That one. Yeah,
Yes,
I
yes,
know all
yes,
about
yes.
that. And of course, the Eternal Champion concept that I said earlier on about how that works out. Apparently, Diag was like a history buff, so he took examples from evil acts done throughout history. I think we get things like the Gulf War, World War One, stuff before that I don't care about because I don't care about history before World Wars.
That's when Alex's history life starts.
Yeah, the idea for the Sanity system apparently came from them playing a tabletop role playing game of Call of Cthulhu. So that was the concept they planned from the start, and the sanity effects. The sanity effects in this game were apparently difficult to implement, and therefore because they were difficult to be approved by Nintendo. So Diak's analysis of that reasoning is that he thinks Nintendo was basically just worried that people wouldn't understand the insanity effects, and they would think that they were an indication of faulty hardware because they would cause people to damage their hardware as a result of the effects. So if you get a message saying that your memory card's being formatted, you might rip it out of the console really quickly.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I tell you what, like H.P. Lovecraft has to be up there with the man that has had sort of the least impact on the world during his life, coupled with the biggest cultural impact since he died. Apparently, he died penniless and not famous. So,
yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah, it's just become such a big thing, especially sort of if you're a gaming nerd. There's absolutely no way you've avoided his sort of visual influence.
Definitely not. Just play Bloodborne and it's just absolutely spaffed all over it. But he's really come like this. Cthulhu was everywhere for a while, like 10 years ago or whatever. Cthulhu memes, Cthulhu plushies, like it was just in contemporary media.
Baldur's Gate 3, the enemies in that are just like absolutely torn from the Call of Cthulhu playbook.
Yeah, there's even an enemy in Symphony of the Night just called Cthulhu, and it's just Cthulhu. But it's just a standard enemy. Like it doesn't do anything specific to you there.
But you're right. Just thinking about it, I mean, like there's like Call of Cthulhu visual stuff in Pirates of the Caribbean movie. It's just everywhere.
Mm-hmm. There was even that TV show called Lovecraft Country, wasn't there? Which was very odd. Like I got properly fed up with that after a while. That was just weird. Didn't enjoy that.
There must be a word for some sort of like the anti-nominative determinism, because like Lovecraft does not lend itself. It's like he's like his name is the inverted version of what his sort of body of work embodies.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it is like anti-nominative determinism because there's no love in his craft at all. Oh, that's excellent. Oh no, we've gone profound. We're like all those YouTubers. Yeah, so the sanity effects, they largely do nothing to your actual progress through the game. No. You did point out that you were losing some health when you had absolutely no sanity, and I think I did see that happen.
And the game does tell you that, because it did tell me that.
Oh, does it?
Point. Yeah, but it tells you once, and it's like a throwaway line. If your sanity gets to 0, you'll start losing health.
Okay, right. So yeah, it's not, but the sanity effects don't kick in only at 0 health, zero sanity. No. There's like a little sort of barrier or a barometer towards the bottom where you will see some of these effects. So some of which I will say some of mine. David's probably had them as well, but he may have had others that he can chime in. I had a GameCube controller error. I couldn't move. It just stopped me from moving completely. And I was getting my ass handed to be like enemies were just beating the shit out of me, and it's just saying my controller had disconnected or something. We both had the scene where where it basically pretends you've completed the game and says look forward to the sequel.
Yeah.
That's actually, I think that's got to be not necessarily a result of having low sanity, because that's kind of at the end of a chapter, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we got it at the same time. Maybe it's like a forced one. But then whenever you sort of finish a chapter, Alex would have low sanity anyway. So
I wouldn't notice that for a while.
Yeah.
Cause with her, there's one I didn't get this one, but I did get it slightly where in the library books sort of started floating across the screen.
Yeah.
But there's one effect if it's really low where they just basically just like fly up into the middle of the screen and just all going around in a massive circle. And there's like 20 books.
One book going across.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I started noticing that like the blood was dripping from the walls and ceilings most of the time when I was playing as Alex again, because I hadn't realized that as soon as she's finished the chapter. The chapters are basically set up where she is reading again another part or another page from the Tome of Eternal Darkness, which will be telling her about whatever ancestor of hers is doing the chapter that you're therefore playing afterwards. So I guess she's reading this book and going mad from reading it all the time, and plus having this fake ghost of her granddad, which is actually the antagonist Pius, in her ear telling her that her parents never loved her and could, before they died, no wonder they weren't proud of her, or whatever it was that he says. I think my Maximilian Roivas, one of her grandfathers or whatever it was, I think he had a heart attack of some kind. It looked like it's not the one where his head fell off, then his arms fell off, then his legs fell off, which is quite funny. I had that a few times, but this guy just basically just died out of absolutely nowhere. He pretended to turn my TV off at one point. That was quite funny. It just effectively just went black as it had that little kind of CRT TV where it all sinks into the center of the screen. It did that.
Which would have been great in the day, because you're more likely to have a CRTV that you're playing it on a screen that does that.
Yeah, same with the volume thing. Did you get the one where it pretends to turn your volume down? Which again, you ain't going to believe that when it's that green luminous text. You used to get the little lines and the little triangle at the end. I actually paused it because I was in the middle of trying to do a magic spell when mine kicked in, and I went to the pause screen and it just stopped doing it. So I cancelled the sanity by just pausing the game, and then it hadn't finished turning the volume down. I think there's another one where you go into, I think it's the piano room in the mansion, and there's a guy hanging.
Oh yeah,
he's hanged himself. Yeah. I think again that's kind of one that you're going to have to get. There's the jump scare in the bath as well, which I'm pretty sure is not a sanity effect. I had a blue screen one as well, where it said some kind of like PC blue screen looking shit. There's one where you get bugs crawling across the screen. I didn't have that one, but I've seen that. Sinking into the floor, where it just looks like quicksand. Yeah, you had that while I was watching you. Yeah, I think I remember I was playing Pro Evo while you were doing it. I bought some fucking $8.99 update thing from some website, and they keep releasing new data files when I get all the new kits and all the new players on 2021 Pro Evo, because I will play that till the day I die, it seems. So I was playing that while you were doing your stream last night on Discord, and then all of a sudden you went, "Oh, I'm sinking into the floor," and I just had a look at just a little head walking around the thing. That was good. It can also make you really tiny at some points in time. It can turn
yeah, that was a good one.
It can flip the camera angle. I had one where it flipped me upside down, so I was on the ceiling.
Oh, cool.
So I just run around on the ceiling until it flipped me back again. What else did I have? I think that's probably most of what I got. I think when you're playing as Maximilian again, it can cut to him being locked in his padded cell, and then it just cuts you back to the game from the mansion again. Do you remember any more that you got?
No, I don't think so. Oh yeah. Have you said the one I was? I was the guy, the granddad with the glasses when you were playing as him. My limbs all fell off, and then my body fell off. You in the same way that you can chop up the zombies. So my arms, it was head, arms, then body fell off until it was just these two legs.
Yeah, that's great that it just lets you carry on walking around like that as well. Yeah, I was a big fan of that one. It's a really cool system. It's no coincidence that they sort of grabbed the attention of Hideo Kojima for their remake of Metal Gear Solid 1 on the GameCube, because they clearly like to fuck with players the same way he does. And as I don't know if we've spoken about this on this podcast already, but a lot of the voice cast in this game is from Metal Gear Solid as well. You've got Alex's voice actress is Naomi, and she's also Lady Shepard. Elia from Chapter 2 is voiced by the woman who does Mei Ling. Anthony from Chapter 3 is Liquid Snake. The monk Paul Luther is Colonel Campbell. Michael Edwards is the DARPA chief. And even David Hayter, Solid Snake himself, does lots of voice acting as Pius's underlings, mainly the little guys in the cloaks that you said have their little light in there to light their face up and make them all spooky looking. I love how the fact that when you go to that, when you're playing as the monk guy, you go to that cathedral and they all just look fucking diseased and disgusting. And he's like, "All right, lads, can I have a look at that hand of whatever it is, Jebediah, or I can't remember what it's called now." But yes, thoughts on the sanity system from you, sir?
Yeah, I think it was sort of covered. I thought it was great. It's the game's USP, and it's really interesting, and I like sort of again appreciating it both because it feels quite unique today, but also it came out in 2002 and it was messing with you in that way. I really think that this stuff about like turning your TV off and turning your volume down and stuff, that would have been such a cool thing to come across in 2002. Like, obviously, a lot of it didn't work because we were emulating it on Dolphin. So, like, when it was faking all these things, you're kind of like, well, that's not how my stuff works.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was great. Can't really add anything beyond that we've already sort of covered, but it's just such a fun, unique thing that we haven't seen much of beyond
Yeah.
Kojima. Actually, yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
Beyond,
that's what I'd say, yeah. Yeah, they must have taken some inspiration from the Metal Gear Solid 1 stuff with, you know, Psycho Mantis and whatnot. And that was also quite heavily adapted into Metal Gear Solid 2 as well, which obviously came after this. I think it came after this. I think the only problem that I think we've already touched on anyway is that largely doesn't affect anything other than like fucking with you.
Yeah.
Which is cool. I guess I kind of would prefer it that way. It just feels like, you know, the punishment for letting your sanity meter doesn't really tangibly exist. It's just there as like a visual showpiece, and almost aside from the health being lost if you're completely at the bottom, I would prefer until like the end of the game, as we're going to get to in a few minutes, like when the game is just making you do busy work in the last sort of 2 out of the last 3 chapters. When it got to that stage of the game, I'm turning it off because I've kind of had enough of it. But before that, like, I just want it on. I want the sanity fix. So I want to see what the game does, which is basically encouraging you to play the game in the least optimal way within its own systems. You're no longer like finishing off enemies or recovering your sanity with magic, because you just think, oh, I want to see how you mess with me, because I know you're not going to screw me out of progressing the game. It just cuts back to where I was anyway. I just want to laugh at something stupid you've put in it.
It would have been interesting to see what they could have done to attach sort of gameplay mechanics to the sanity meter. As in, like, there's certain areas where you've got to make yourself more insane to get through different places for different reasons.
Yeah.
Or maybe things appear that you can collect when you're insane, but you can't see it when you're not. Yeah, like, I think
that's Bloodborne, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, you have to get more it's not madness, is it? But you have to get more insight in Bloodborne to be able to see those invisible things. I've never played any of them because I am a fucking coward. But don't the Outlast, is it either the Outlast games or the Amnesia games? One of them have a sanity element to them, don't they?
You could well be right. I've only played a bit of the first game, probably like 2 hours of the first Outlast, so it could well do.
Yeah, like obviously, as I said earlier, the sanity system was patented by Nintendo in 2005. They clearly never used it ever again, and it lapsed a couple of years ago. So whether we see this kind of thing ever happen again, I don't know. I doubt it.
You've just made me have an
it's interesting that they just took it. Go on.
It's just a personal epiphany. I'll talk about how I like stealth games and I like horror games. I think it's stealth horror I can't handle, because Outlast is the reason I stopped playing that, is because there's stealth horror in that.
I'm in complete agreement.
I couldn't handle it.
Games where you have to hide under a bed or in something and you can't fight back. I struggle with those massively, which is why we didn't necessarily love Alien Isolation, even though the game is clearly fantastic. It's just too much like running and hiding and can't do anything about this horrible thing that's going to game over me in a minute.
Oh my god, I still remember the first time that alien. You see the alien proper when you're in that sort of big open space and there's other people walking around. It just comes and fucks everyone up, and you've just got to creep around. Oh my god. Anyway,
it's the first time you get done from behind.
Yes.
By that alien, where you know it's kind of potentially stalking you from somewhere, but you think you've made it to a door to open it, and then just a spear comes through your chest.
I want to know how they handle that in the next Alien game, because like having done a lot of Resident Evil games, sort of our pro to Resident Evil 2 remake was how he's always stalking you. He's always somewhere. And then the 3 one was a bit more scripted. Like the Alien Isolation is scripted. He isn't somewhere all the time. So,
but when he's there, he then becomes this ever present until you get past him or whatever. He's not scripted it thereafter. He's constantly
exactly.
Yeah, and that while their AI set up for the alien has been fucking essayed about by loads of douchebags on YouTube. some of it's quality.
Mm-hmm.
That is definitely off-putting for a lot of people. Certainly, after a while, it was off-putting for us. Can they run that risk again? Do they stay true to that vision, or do they go, now we're playing Aliens rather than Alien, and now you can shoot stuff again?
How does that game finish? Can you remember? Because I was trying to, like, what do they do for a sequel? You do
Yeah, I'm not
survive,
sure.
don't you?
Yes.
I guess you just
Yeah.
do Ridley, like what Ridley just sort of. They just kept finding a way to put an alien back wherever she was.
Yeah. Yeah, she really is terrible at avoiding being where an alien is.
Yeah.
Right, let's talk about some of the characters and
Yes, let's do
chapters
it.
to finish off the pod. So the basic overarching narrative of this story is that it's the year 2000 AD, and this girl Alexandra Roivas, she returns to her family's estate in Rhode Island because her grandfather Edward Roivas, her only living relative, was found brutally murdered, which we later find out was by one of these horrible creatures from the ancients. So the policeman is useless, completely and utterly useless to a hilarious level. So they've got absolutely nowhere with their investigation
He
because
gives
he
her
hasn't even
such
got a
shit
head.
as well.
Yeah,
Like
he's a real dick.
unnecessary shit.
Yeah, just look, he ain't got a head. I'm pretty sure it's your granddad, but you got to tell me. So Alex obviously decides to investigate the mansion for clues, stumbles across a secret room, which contains a book bound in human skin called the Tome of Eternal Darkness. And then as she decides to read it, it finds it contains accounts of these various people from the past, beginning with the story of Pius Augustus in 26 BC, who of course becomes the main antagonist of the game after he picks up this artifact of the ancients. And then we move on chapter to chapter, playing as different people. The first chapter after that is in the Angkor Thom region in this forbidden city in Cambodia. What was, Cambodia? No, sorry. What then became, Cambodia later. That's where we play as Elia, the court dancer. That's the first of the temple one, isn't it, basically?
Yes. Took me a second to remember who that was. She's the one that to me looked like she was out of a original Star Trek. James T. Kirk was going to jump out at any point and try and have sex with me.
100%. Yeah, she's got a bit of Princess Leia going on about her there as well. She has just a short sword as well. But all of these people are obviously very adept at combat towards a few minutes after they pick up a sword. They're quite able to chop off the heads of skeletons and zombies.
Can you explain to me how many sort of overarching settings are? Because I was fully aware that a lot of the settings were crisscrossing over each other, but I couldn't tell which one. So obviously, is the mansion built where the cathedral is, or are they all different locations?
The mansion is in Rhode Island on top of the City of the Ancients, isn't it?
It's on top of the City of the Ancients, which
is the horrible stuff that we have to go through towards the last 3 chapters of the game.
Yeah, okay. So there's the City of the Ancients. Which is sort of includes the mansion. Then there's the cathedral area, which seems to be in England, perhaps.
That's in France, the cathedral.
And then they have the Cambodia area that you go through quite often. Is that where
that's the temple.
Where's the tower in the City of the Ancients?
What, the Tower of the Pillar of Flesh?
Yeah.
That's here in the
City of the Ancients.
Yeah.
Okay, so is there no link to what's the Cambodian link to everything? Nothing really. It's just another
Not
place.
Really.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so she's just like what is she? She's a court dancer, isn't she? So she apparently reads passages from the tome and yearns for adventure, and then gets locked in the temple. She's the one who gets chosen to bear Mantorok's essence. Mantorok basically being this big blob. He's he's the fourth ancient, isn't he? He's the one we don't get to choose from. You've got the 3 ancients with the ones where you get to choose the artifact of, with Pius, the green, blue, red ones, and then you've got the third one. Mantorok is obviously the purple one, I assume.
Mm-hmm.
He's just a big amorphous blob.
Mm-hmm.
But she tries to resist that and then gets killed.
And she hides
And
the heart inside herself.
correct,
And
yeah,
gives
she
it to
gives
someone.
it to
Right, okay. Because that's what they were
she.
after.
Who is Edwin Lindsay? Oh, she gives it to Indiana Jones man.
Yes.
800 years later.
Yes.
And then she's finally released, and then obviously she appears in the final battle as a ghost, which everybody does, one after the other. So I'm assuming that when it says there are 4 locations in the game, I'm assuming that we're counting the City of the Ancients as one of those, because you've got the temple, you've got the cathedral, you've got the mansion.
Yeah.
That's 3.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically all you get. And then there's a City of the Ancients, which is like an underground one, I guess, is the 4th location. Because the 3rd one is the first one where we get into the cathedral, where we're playing Antony, this messenger for Charlemagne in 814 AD, who just basically seems to just turn into a zombie throughout
I couldn't
the
work
chapter.
out why he was turning into a zombie, because no one else does that I could think of.
So he is ordered to deliver a message to Emperor. Is it Emperor? No, probably not. Charlemagne, anyway, whoever Charlemagne was back in France back in the day. He gets given this message that he's ordered to deliver to him, and he's suspicious of it. And it says,
So is it like an assassination attempt?
The monk basically says nobody but Charlemagne is to read this, but then he reads it anyway, and then it consumes him. Turns, yeah, you're right. The wiki says it alludes to treachery in store for the Frankish emperor. It is the Emperor Charlemagne, yeah. So then he gets cursed and he starts to just turn into a zombie and decomposes more as the game goes on.
I like how you've got to fight him later. That's cool.
That was cool, because he's just basically been sat in that room that he's trying to get into to warn Charlemagne about it. Yeah.
I need back in a sec. Need the toilet.
So yeah, Antony unfortunately doesn't achieve his goal of warning Charlemagne that the people are plotting against him, because by the time he gets to Charlemagne's chambers or whatever it is, having done several boss fights at this point, including one with the bishop, you'd find that the bunch of monks have already murdered him, and Charlemagne is already dead. And then they tell him that he was a fool for trying to save him, because his fate, not to mention that of the entire world, was decided many centuries ago. And then like one of those bone thief things bursts from his chest. And I think it indicates that all the monks were effectively bone thieves, which is something that comes up later with Maximilian, who thinks that all of his servants are bone thieves as well, and just fucking starts shooting the shit out of them in their beds.
Do you know what the time difference is between the monk guy and
Antony?
Yeah.
So Antony is in 814 AD, and Paul Luther is in 1485.
Oh, so it's 600 years old.
Yeah. So he's had a long time sat in that room as a zombie waiting.
Well, just because I thought, like, so when you arrive, you obviously find the dead body, and it just seems to be killed in the same way as a body that you found as the kid earlier on. And I wondered if you were finding bodies simultaneously, but obviously not. They'd just been carrying on with their, don't know what the fuck they were up to in there. For 600 years.
Yep, 600 years. The next chapter, it takes place back in the Forbidden City again, which is now Persia. Or maybe that is different then. Maybe the Forbidden City is different to the Cambodian one. I guess they just look the same. Yeah, sorry, that is the 4th one, isn't it? So you got the mansion, the cathedral, the Forbidden City, and the temple. And then the City of the Ancients. So the first one we get in this Forbidden City then is this Karim, a Persian swordsman who's sent into the desert to find a treasure to try and gain the affections of his lover Chandra.
Oh, those two piss me off.
Yeah, you can tell everybody what you said to me afterwards, because that was very, very funny. But yeah, so basically she's after an artifact of the ancients. I don't know if she knows that's exactly what it is. But just before you, as Karim, are about to get the artifact and pick it up, Chandra appears as a ghost to him and tells him that she had given herself to a nobleman because she couldn't be bothered to wait for him to come back, and she was mutilated and killed by that person and is now a ghost. Although he's pissed off at first because she's a cheating hoe, he just kisses a
He
ghost
gets over
when
it
she says
really
she has to.
quickly. Because
Yeah,
I find it really funny because he was like obviously pissed off that she got bored and just started shagging about. And
yeah,
then she's like, "Oh, something about like you need to come back to me or something," and then he just goes like, "You don't actually look that good anymore," because she's obviously been
yeah.
just like carved up with a knife. And then at some point later, like 2 minutes later, he just sort of shrugs his shoulder and says, "Oh, the things I do for love," and then just starts getting off with a ghost. And I'm just like, well, make up your mind. He went on a journey of emotions very quickly. Did the poor
Yes,
guy?
he did. Yeah, so David just texted me saying, I don't care who it is, I'd be kissing no ghosts, especially ones ripped up by knives because they couldn't be fucked waiting on me getting home from a job they sent me on. Oh, you've been shagging someone else, have you? No worries. I enjoyed that. It's a very, very salient point of just don't kiss the ghost, mate.
Yeah, just leave her.
Yeah,
She's
he
made your
then,
bed.
yeah, it's somebody else's.
Yeah.
But yeah, he comes back and he speaks to Roberto Bianchi later on to give him, I think he gives him the artifact or something. Oh no, we'll find out in a minute. We then play as in 1760 AD as Dr. Maximilian Roivas, obviously a direct ancestor of Alex Roivas, our main character.
Yeah.
This one takes place in the mansion itself, which is quite
Yes.
cool because you get to go around. There's loads of like servants just trying to clean up and
Yeah.
shit. Eventually, bone thieves and horrors start appearing and attacking all the servants, and Max finds Enkar under the mansion. He's the first one to find this, like the city of the ancients.
Oh, so he is. Yeah. Okay.
He obviously goes through a lot of miserable shit to try and survive, but then gets locked up in an insane asylum.
Poor lad.
Because
I
everybody
do like
thinks
the
he's
twist where
mental.
you sort of realise what he did to get himself into the insane asylum later on in the game.
Do elaborate, sir.
So yeah, there's like a hidden. Do you find a hidden door, or you're aware of a hidden door as Alex, and then eventually later in the game you get into the hidden door, which
Because when you hear through that hidden door, don't you hear people getting killed in there?
and screaming and shouting, and when you're
Yeah.
Maximilian, it's the door to the servants' quarters, and then when you eventually sort of pickaxe the wall down and get inside, it turns out that he had gone in there and basically gunned everyone down. It wasn't clear that they were actually possessed, though, to me.
Yes, it does say on the wiki. It says he obviously attempts to warn the world about all the darkness and the Guardians, and it's implied that he was committed to an insane asylum 3 months later, but for trying to tell the world about it. But it's later revealed that he killed 4 of his servants, suspecting they were possessed by bone thieves. It doesn't actually say that they were or not. But apparently there's an implication later on as well that Pius Augustus was one of the people who may have been involved in accusations against him when he tried to warn everybody and got him locked up. So I guess Pius has gone normal. Has got a
Can sort of
normal.
present as other people, can't he, and other things.
Yeah.
And that's because that took me ages to work out. Because the first time I saw it was when it was the great Alex's granddad or something, and then he says something really dodgy, and she walks away, and he's got like these blue flickering lights behind him, and that's obviously the sign that it's Pius. But the blue flickering lights are the same color as the ghost, so I was just like, well, this is obviously significant, but he's a ghost, so it doesn't seem mad to me that he would have blue lights that are the same color as him on him. And then there's like later on, it was earlier than that, the guy that sort of ends up in the big tower of bodies, he can see Pius in his true form, and that's what's unusual about him because most people can't.
Yeah, that's right.
And I didn't sort of put all that together until later. I think I was thinking about it last night.
Yeah, that's one thing that goes in favor of this game for sure, is that you will stay with you for quite a while afterwards. You'll be thinking about all the mental stuff in this game.
I do like when it knits itself together as well, and it doesn't automatically do it in a sort of ham-fisted, obvious way. There's like stuff that you sort of pick out in retrospect that you maybe didn't at the same time. I do enjoy that.
Yeah, and some of these people, as I just mentioned earlier, like they will revisit as spirits different characters along the way, not necessarily all just convening on Alex. Sometimes they'll the Venetian architect gets visited by the ghost of the Persian dude, and the next chapter we play is Edwin Lindsay, who's basically Indiana Jones. He's exploring the Cambodian ruins of Angkor Thom in 1983. And this is another one where, as David was just saying, a mysterious benefactor named Paul Augustine, who's clearly pious in disguise, is the one who's tried to get him to go in there and find this treasure inside the ruins. But then later on, obviously, he reveals himself to be pious and tries to kill Lindsay. And then he finds zombie Elia later on, who gives him Mantorok's essence.
Two things it does there is, one, it really lays on this is Indiana Jones thick, because he's like, oh, I'll give you an early reward or bonus or something, and then tries to kill him. And then he goes and hides behind a pillar, and the Augustine just shouts at him, "You're just a lecturer," because obviously Indiana Jones is a lecturer.
Yeah.
He's like, but I've had 2,000 years to be a warrior or something like that. And I'm like, oh yes, that's who that is.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. That was a good little barb.
I wish they'd made me run away from a rolling ball or something like that. But they do the Indiana Jones thing where he's got like this in the movie where he's got the bag of sand and he switches it with the You've got to do that.
Yeah, that I think his level was the best incarnation of that Angkor Thom Cambodia part. It got a little bit long-winded towards the end, but his one felt the most appropriate to be in that area because it's very Indiana Jones riff.
Another puzzle in there I had to look up because I was almost making it more complicated. There's a bit where you've got to go in and you stand on a disc on the ground, and then this statue turns and faces you, and the hand lifts off the bracelet. I was like looking for things because there's a previous puzzle in the game where you've got to like fill up cups of water and then put it on the plate to like hold the plate down. And I was like, oh, I must have to do something like that. So I was like looking around, trying to find things to push onto it, try to push the statue onto on the plate and things like that. And now you just stand on the plate and then just run over and grab it before it closes.
Yeah, just before it notices. Yeah. There was also something in that where you kept having to push plates in on the walls, and I didn't figure out what that did. I kept doing it.
So if you stood on the plates in the corridors and just like set the traps off, that reset the traps.
Oh,
because it took me a while to work that out as well. Because I was like,
I was just like, I'm doing this and I'm getting nothing from it. Did not realize that. Oh well, I guess I kept resetting the traps and not realizing and thinking, oh, this is easy. Yeah. Because
video game logic tells you, especially that game, like you leave the room and come back and the area resets, especially
absolutely. Yeah.
Although I did notice it didn't always do that, because sometimes an enemy would be, like sort of the areas that it would load a new screen, but there was no door. It's like you walk up to a corridor and you go to a different part of the corridor, it would sort of go to black and then reload. If an enemy, if you accidentally got chased out of an area like that by an enemy, when you'd go back into the area, the enemy would be standing in the exact same place he was when it sort of chased you out, which I thought was quite good.
That was good. Yeah. But because obviously I was doing that a lot as well, to go out, get my spells ready, and then come back in again. Edward Lindsay is basically, aside from the main character Alex, is the only other person who survives and doesn't get killed, because he gets the essence of Mantorok from the ghost of Elia, and he takes it to Edward later on in the game, which is obviously when
what's he called? He survives.
Well, I think it's implied that they're going to get him anyway. Maybe we'll find out what happens. Oh, actually, it does say it is also possible Michael Edwards escaped, though not confirmed. There we go.
Yeah, because he said he had to go do something first before they got him.
Yeah. Because he meets Edward in the streets, doesn't he? And gives him, and then he obviously DPDs the stuff to Alex later on.
Yeah.
So he's obviously survived until the year 2000 anyway. So he survives 9 years from after he leaves.
Yeah, he's been watching, because that's a timely delivery. So he's been stalking.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. Paul Luther is our next character that we play as. He's a Franciscan monk on a pilgrimage in 1485. He wants to see the Hand of Jude, that's what it's called, which is in the Oubliette Cathedral. But he gets detained almost immediately when he's there by Philippe Augustine. Gee, I wonder who the fuck that could be in disguise. He gets freed by a custodian, and then he's venturing around the cathedral. He eventually finds Antony and kills him, and then prays for him. And then he has to stab some statue with a sacrificial dagger to open a door. Finds out that his custodian friend has been murdered.
I like that bit. You see, when you get put in the room and sort of held as a prisoner, the first thing my character did at least was just start stealing jewels. Just start pocketing shit. I was just like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, fine. Because I was like, I don't think he'd do this, and I was like, oh, maybe he needs it to escape, spend money. I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah. So what happens? Yeah, basically this guy gets killed by Philippe Augustine. He sends bone thieves after him. Gets killed by a black guardian. I do really like the fact that all of the people that you play as pretty much in this game, apart from the ones we just mentioned, get violently murdered at the end of their chapter.
Yeah.
Because as the Eternal Champion conceit tells us, that's what's apparently supposed to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Who do we play as next? So that's the cathedral. That's probably, I would have said the World War I version of the cathedral is the better of the two, but the final boss in that one, which we'll talk about in a minute, is probably what drags that one down, and maybe Paul Luther's is the best of the one.
Yeah, those two are probably comfortably my favourite one. I don't know, for some reason I found myself sort of swept up in that story more than I was the rest. Not that I wasn't the rest, but yeah, that one sort of sticks out. I really
there's nice mystery to that one.
Yeah, exactly.
We then play as Roberto Bianchi in 1460 AD in the Forbidden City again, the one where the pillar of flesh is being constructed. He is effectively kidnapped or forced to survey the area of the underground temple thing of the Forbidden City to find where the best place to put this pillar of flesh is.
Yeah, he's some sort of for like 12th century quality engineer.
Yeah,
for cracks.
Yeah, but very slowly because he's a big fat lad. Yeah. So clearly, from being from Venice, he's got a certain taste for things.
Likes his mozzarella.
He does indeed. So I found him to be one of the more frustrating people to play. It's just because he was so slow and had such shit stamina.
Yeah, it was actually probably him that made me, or was it? It may have been him that made me sort of click overtly that each character had different stats.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, even the wiki here says Roberto is, without a doubt, one of the worst characters to play. Attribute-wise, though his health is well above average, he's very slow, tires easily, and has very poor magic and sanity. So, he kind of sucked.
Yeah.
But he effectively, after you've surveyed the Forbidden City, you just get chucked into the pillar of flesh by all the guards. It's one of those moments where at the end of his chapter, like, he's taken up to where they've got this big hole in the ground where they're building this pillar of flesh, which is some kind of like weird Han Solo monument of like encapsulated concrete dead people. They're like throwing in, slaves or whatever right in front of him, and you think, oh, maybe he's going to do something magical to get out of this, or some like Deus Ex Machina is going to save him. No, it just unceremoniously just gets chucked in there, and then it ends.
I do quite enjoy that. It's some of the way they finish off some of the characters is just so like abrupt. Like that one, it's just like they just chuck him in, and again, where your guy got his head exploded, my guy got stood on. It was almost like mid-sentence, just splat dead, move on.
Yeah. I guess that's kind of relates back again to sort of the Lovecraft element of it, where most of those stories as well, everybody just kind of goes mad and unceremoniously dead, and it's just somebody retelling the story of how it happened.
Yeah, that's true actually.
They don't seem to give. There's not a lot of majesty to the way these people just go out. It's just like, yeah, done, bye, next. Speaking of next, we have Peter Jacob, who's a field reporter during World War I in 1916, who goes back to the cathedral, which is now converted into a field hospital for World War I, and there's fucking tons of crazy fighting and explosions and bombs going off and gunfire outside.
It made narrative sense to me that he would have low sanity, given the probable horrors that he's probably already seen in his life up to that point.
Yes, definitely. This is the one where most of it is just revisiting the cathedral until you get to a battle with a Black Guardian, which is very, very difficult. and not so something that nearly stopped David from finishing the game.
Yeah, I wish I actually had seen how it. I assume the boss battle is basically the same for everyone.
Yeah,
There
but
may
it's
be the odd attack, but yeah, like with the zombie spawning and stuff like that, I take it that's the
yeah,
same. Yeah,
yeah. The green. I just got green bolts like orbs thrown at me.
yeah.
I think I was probably able to get closer to the boss than you were because there was no. I don't remember it giving me any physical reaction to being
Or
stood
just
right next to
yeah,
it.
you had to like eventually had to work out that you had to like move away from it because if you stayed close to it, it would just endlessly try and stamp on your head until I moved away from it, and then it was about trying to aggro the zombies that it was spawning at the right time because apparently the aggro field for these zombies is quite small, so you could actually be fairly close to two. You could aggro two of them and not aggro the third one, so you would just be standing in suspended animation until you got close to him, and then he would sort of come to life, and then that would sort of click the rest of the boss animations into gear, and then you just didn't have much time. Once I figured it out, I got through it, but yeah, it
Mm.
was not a fun experience. It really marred the game for me, I think, to be honest.
Yeah, you have to sort of tank through a lot of damage to even get some of your magic attack spells off because none of traditional weapons will work on it.
Yeah,
So your learned behavior would be, oh well, I'm going to use the most powerful magic attack spell I can use, but the casting time is so long that it's just impossible. If you move in any way while casting a spell, it will stop being cast, and you'll still lose that magic from the meter. So the risk of trying to get off a high magic usage spell and not have it work means you basically have to run around in circles to get your mana back before you can try a lesser spell anyway.
yeah.
So yeah, that was a tough boss fight. That was definitely probably the toughest thing in the whole game,
Yeah.
and I'm completely with you there.
Yeah, it was a bit because I was even thinking sort of in hindsight, I quite enjoyed the final boss battle. That was all right actually.
Yeah, I didn't mind that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just that one did not enjoy.
Yeah, he actually doesn't suffer. He doesn't die as a result of the Tome of Eternal Darkness either. Actually, he delivers the artifact that he gets from the Black Guardian, like as an old man. He delivers it to Edward. Apparently, in that time he tries to get experts to look at it, and they can't identify it. And he writes an account of the war and strongly implies the ancients' involvement, which is what got Edward interested in what he was doing anyway, because obviously he was researching the ancients himself. But he doesn't seem to die as a result of the Tome of Eternal Darkness the way most of them do. He just kind of dies of old age, I think, having delivered his artifact to Edward,
So, yeah.
which he then, yeah. Then we play as Edward Roivas himself, and this is the first of the two levels where we are in the mansion for some of it, which is a great bit of fun. But then we're off to the city of the ancients underground, and unfortunately having to do this massive spell.
Honestly,
Takes
yeah,
such a long time.
like you're saying, narratively, and to make sort of cohesive sense, it needs to be that long. But yeah, like from a gameplay perspective, I could have done it with it being a third of the length it was.
Yeah. He gets led to the Tome of Eternal Darkness by the ghost of Maximilian, the man who was locked up earlier, who's obviously some kind of grandfather or something to him anyway. Probably quite a bit more than that. And then his servants get attacked by a vampire in the mansion, and then you have to so you have to do some cool shit like running around the mansion, but now it's a very hostile environment again. But you effectively what do you actually dispel? Do you dispel some kind of? I don't really know what he does to the city itself. What does he actually do?
Oh, he does, yeah, because he blows the shit out of it, basically, doesn't he?
Apparently, he just wipes out the forces of the city of the ancients with a massive dispel magic spell from the 9-point spell circle in these towers that are above the city. But 48 years later, he gets killed by a lesser guardian, which cuts his head off while he's reading a newspaper or something. It says here that his reaction before being killed, calmly raising his head with eyes closed, implies he was expecting his death to be inevitable. So I guess, once he fucked with the ancients and mucked up their city, he probably expected they were going to come for him. They just took almost 50 years to do so.
Yep, exactly.
But he obviously gets a lot of the artifacts throughout his life in the mansion and hides them around. And tries to get Alex to come and check it out. The last non-Roivus character we play as is Michael Edwards, where we're back inside the Forbidden City again. But this time with a sort of a Gulf War. What's his job? He's an industrial firefighter.
That's right.
But one who can also use machine guns and grenade launchers and all this kind of shit.
So yeah, he gets blown up in a gas explosion, and then gets blown up so hard he ends up in the ancient city. Is that how that happens?
So yes, he is sent to extinguish oil fires ignited by Iraqi troops in the Gulf War in the Middle East. One of the explosions leaves him trapped in the Forbidden City. Yeah, he just gets trapped in there because he just blows up and he falls in there.
So
as the only survivor.
Entrances to the Forbidden City then, because if he's in the Gulf,
maybe it was sealed up at that point, and it's just been they blow a hole in it through that explosion, and he just falls in.
He enters the Forbidden City via the Gulf, but then Alex enters the Forbidden City via Rhode Island.
No, that's the City of the Ancients. Forbidden City is the one where we had to survey it earlier on as old Roland Bianchi with the pillar of flesh.
Got you.
And then he gets the essence of an ancient from Roberto's ghost who comes out of that pillar in his game and blows up the bridge in the where the worms seem to come out. And I think people get chucked in there for food for these weird worm things. I don't quite understand what they were actually doing.
The willy worms.
The willy, exactly, yeah. And then he again meets up with Edward, gives him the package, and then says that as we said earlier, he says that the ancients are going to come and get him. But we don't actually know what the package is, although it's very strongly implied that it's an essence of one of the ancients, because he gives the essence of the enchanted gladius to Alex later on as well. He puts it through the front door.
Yeah, it must be.
And then the final chapter, we go play as Alex herself again, but this time she is dropping into the City of the Ancients and redoing this 9-point spell. This time, instead of fighting enemies mostly afterwards the way Edward does, you're doing some kind of puzzling and also running over an electrified floor before you go to the big fight with Pius at the end, where you summon a rival, the dominant ancient, to fight Pius is ancient in space, while you twat him with the sword down in the City of the Ancients.
Yeah, which was like I said, it was quite once you got there, that was quite fun. Going through the old city again. Yeah, we've been over that a couple of times now. Maybe could have been done with not doing that, but the actual end boss fight was quite fun.
Yeah, it was. I mean, he's not too difficult to handle. Mostly once you start summoning the ghosts of all the people that you've played as before to hit this artifact that keeps floating around the battlefield, the stakes as playing as them are, you can't lose any health from it. Just you effectively have to avoid Pius's attacks and then hit him to transform into one of your ancestral ghosts. Then you have to hit this artifact, and if you don't manage to hit the artifact as the ghost in time and you get hit in the process, you will then revert back to Alex and have to repeat the cycle over again. If you get hit as Alex, obviously you lose health and then you're going to have to recover and potentially stop yourself dying. But once you're the ghosts, it's not quite as difficult, and he's quite easy to bait into a swing, who then with his staff will miss. He does have a magic attack and he does teleport later on, but he's not that difficult to defeat.
Now, one thing I was actually pleased that they did is when they were obviously giving you the new plates to upgrade your magic strength power, and with the extra points. As it was going up, I was thinking, well, what's the point in still having the weaker magic? But the game, through boss fights, does give you a reason to use the breadth of your magic spells, rather than, it's not like, once you get like the big health regenerator, that's not that doesn't mean that you'll never use the lesser ones again.
No, because you just can't use that one in a boss fight. Yeah, you don't have the time.
I thought that was quite smartly done, especially the way that, as we've spoken about, the game makes you interact with the spells, i.e. sort of build your spell collection again every time you get a new plate, rather than just sort of automatically upgrade you. Well, it gives you a reason to keep all the different types, which I thought was good.
Yeah, and having the little sort of quick access D-pad buttons or the Y button to use your spells probably is when you're going to be using those is in a boss fight.
Other thing that I wanted to mention is that I like that there's a couple spells that seem to be made for specific gameplay mechanics, or like not mechanics, like specific moments in the game, like the trapper one. There's like 2 points in the game where you've got to
Yeah,
send something to the other dimension. I like the little nod that the things you send to the other dimension are there when you yourself
yeah,
end up going back down there. I actually did
yeah.
really enjoy that dimension as well, because sometimes they sort of made a game, they sort of turned it into part of the game where I would deliberately get myself sent there so that I could go and address
Same.
something. Um, that was smart, and it wasn't just a thing that you would try and avoid for the whole time. Sometimes you would actively seek it out.
Yeah, little trapper enemies that are quite hard to see sometimes will be in the environment, and if you get caught by them, they would send you to this this little trapper dimension, which mostly really would just serve as an annoyance to kind of throw you off what you were trying to do in the main game world. But it does have these kind of platforms in it that you can warp to one each time you get sent there, which would then recover your health or sanity or
And you could
magic,
only
or
pick
you can
one, I
just leave.
realized, because I would
You
always
could only pick
try.
one.
Like there was once I tried to just go around it and just replenish everything, and realized that no, you have to pick one, and only
Yeah.
one when you're in there.
Yeah. And then when we got the summon trapper spell, as I said to you last night, I thought it was just going to be a way for me to get myself sent there if I ever needed to replenish anything. But I don't. That's not what it was. It's just you're controlling it and can attack enemies with it and send. I wonder if you sent loads of enemies to the dimension, you would see them there as well, because I never did that. But
No,
I
I
bet
never.
if you went and sent
Yeah.
an enemy there, you'd actually see them in there as well.
Oh, we should have played with that. That's a great, because yeah, I only ever engaged with the trapper when it made me.
Yeah. Same with the zombie when it needed to get squished by that block.
Yeah.
Or the horror when I had to put it in its little exhibition bit in that puzzle near the end. I never use the summon spells to attack enemies.
Oh, I'm
I'm pretty
interested in
sure
that
they
now.
can actually move through different rooms as well.
Mm.
Like you don't have to be stood next to them. Be interesting to give that a proper try at a later
Yeah, I was
many
going to
years
say
from now when
now.
I want to
Well,
play this again.
because I've recorded my what is it? Recorded my actions in the annals of time. I can't now
Yeah.
go back to just test it out. I'd need to start again and get to the trapper spell, and I don't know if I've got that in me.
Nah, probably not. But yeah, I really enjoyed like making myself overpowered with the magic spells. Once if you've got the time to sit there and cast them, or you've got the space at least to stay away from an enemy and not have it get blocked. You know, getting a bunch of dudes coming at you, but putting up a shield around yourself and then a damage field around yourself, or hoping that the enemies would walk into the damage field and effectively be caught in a
Yeah,
triangular
love
trap
that.
of pain. Enchanting your weapons to like one shot enemies of the weaker color against it. Like the magic system in this game is really good fun
Yeah.
to use. It's not necessarily very fun to set up. It's quite time consuming.
No,
Probably a
but
lot of the time spent in menus.
there's a lot of sort of examples. Like I bet you that trapper thing would work, because there was only a couple of occasions where, like, or sort of in most occasions. Sorry, I'll flip that on its head. In most occasions, I would think I would be like looking at my spells and I'd go, oh, I wonder if that will work and I can do something with that. And then you try it and it would work a lot of the time. The
Mm.
magic system is sort of dynamic enough to allow you to play with it and try and approach different scenarios with different sort of ideas and intents, which I thought was smart, especially for a game that of that era. A lot of games during that era would
Hmm.
have just had this is the way to do it and this is the spell you need to employ, whereas this was
Yeah.
felt much more open.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, definitely allows for experimentation or developing your own sort
Yeah.
of style to approach combat. That's for sure. That's all I had for the notes. Like I said, if I was to give this a rating, I would probably maybe give it an 8. Um, not quite like bad enough to be a 7. Not bad enough, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I think it's got more going for it than your average 7 out of 10. But I think that some of the more fiddly and long-winded elements towards the end of the game drop it from being a 9. But I think I still very, very glad we finally got to play this.
Yes. It's again, it'll continually be one of the things I appreciate about this podcast much more, because I have an appreciation for this game that I obviously didn't have beforehand. And I think if I
Mm.
had just been sort of playing it off my own back, I don't think I would have seen it through. I would have played it for a little bit and then wandered off. Whereas doing this podcast sort of makes you sort of sort of step back and take stock of a game that I wouldn't have played otherwise. So I'm glad we did it, because
Me
it's
too.
one of the more interesting games we've done this year, especially sort of doing
Yeah,
different things,
definitely.
which I suppose brings us to the end of this episode. Alex, let me open up my notes again. Yeah, so next up, we've got a game that I'm going to say, like, talking about interesting things. I've sort of gone the flip side for this next game we've got, and I've just been sort of on a roller coaster for the last year. So there was the initially flip the tables excited when they announced it, and then I probably went flip the tables upset when I found out who was making it.
Yeah.
Then,
Oh, it's Bloomer's team. Oh, well.
yeah, and then stayed flip the tables. I went even sort of further down into the depths of despair when they had that initial gameplay reveal.
Yeah,
And
everybody did, really.
almost against all logic and expectation, this game seems to have come out and turned out to actually be good. So we're back up flipping tables again, but happily, I guess. Maybe
Yeah.
have to flip the odd table in Rage, given how it seems to perform on PC.
Yeah, I've not had any fun with the performance on PC. I was up till 1 a.m. trying to get it not be shit, but I think I've just about got there.
Excellent.
From
But
what I
yes,
hear, it's largely so well thought of because it just basically copies the original in every way.
yeah. So I've heard. So in a nutshell, from what I've heard of reviews, it's a shot-for-shot copy of the previous game, but everything's updated and made better with some combat padding added to it.
I see. Yes, that would explain some of the trailers
Yeah.
being almost entirely combat focused. And everyone thinking, "Where's all this combat coming from?
Yeah.
Are you playing Silent Hill 2? I don't think you are."
Yeah. But yeah, so this is the Silent Hill 2 remake. I guess you're
Yes,
excited
but I'm
about
going to
this.
play the original as well. Yeah, big time
I'm going to
excited.
try and play the original too. How
Yeah.
are you going to play that? Are you going to emulate it?
No, I've got it. I've got
Because I don't think I. What have you got?
Silent Hill 2 Inner Fears on the original Xbox, which I have started on my
Let me have a. Well,
CRT
we've
TV
got.
and my Xbox behind me. It's not cheap, my friend. It's not cheap.
That
You
was
can
my
emulate.
next.
You can emulate Silent Hill 2 on PS2 on your PC.
Okay,
I
I'm going to
probably
do
would
that.
do that.
I'm going to do that. Because
And it will be probably a much better time than I'm having because I have to wait for. I always get really excited thinking, right, I'm going to play this on original hardware, and then you remember that loading existed a lot back in that era, and it takes a long time for the disc to fucking spin itself around and load it.
oh my god!
Wow.
So on Amazon, obviously, it's not the best place to get your retro games. $74.99. Jesus.
For which version?
That's the OG Xbox version.
Yeah, I didn't pay that much for it, but I didn't pay.
Um,
I didn't pay nothing. Let's put it that way.
CEX, £38.
On the Xbox.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about what I paid for it.
I wonder if I wonder. Let's have a look. Silent Hill 2 HD mod.
Don't do it. Oh, right. I was gonna say, don't do it. Don't get the HD remaster, whatever you do, or whatever they called it.
Have they done an HD? Let's do HD texture pack. That would probably be a better search.
That EPSX2 or whatever it is that we use to play PlayStation games is a really good emulator, though.
Have I used that before? Have I? What have I been?
I'm not sure, but I'll walk you through that afterwards because
the one people always talk about. I don't know if it's a PS1 emulator. DuckStation is the one I always.
Oh yeah, DuckStation's good for PS1, but for PS2, the one I'm currently using is really really good, and got Redream vibes about it. But I went back to it again the other day because playing Astrobot, and as I said on the previous podcast, Cassie being obsessed with the monkey level, I downloaded Ape Escape 2 on PS5 using the PS Plus back catalog, and when you load it up, it's like, oh, you will probably notice some issues with this game that aren't present in the original, and it's fucking horrible. Like, it's just flickering, the screen keeps going, like the backgrounds keep going black, and there's like grey spots everywhere. It's just awful, like a terrible conversion that they should just have not bothered with. Then you play it on a PC just through an emulator of the PS2 original, perfect. Looks beautiful. I don't understand how they fucked up that PS5 port, but they did big time. It's terrible. So yeah, I'll show you how to set that up.
Yes,
and
please.
play it on that.
There is an HD texture pack. Have a look at. I'll send you this to look at in your own time. But yeah, I was looking. I was sorry. I went quiet there because I found a place someone's done so you can sort of drag the comparison over, which I very much enjoy.
Oh yeah, I love that kind of stuff.
And
That's
I was looking
really
at it,
clever.
and it just seems to be well, the one I picked is maybe a bad one because it looks exactly the same, just a bit less smudged. But
Yeah,
that's
which
not bad.
sometimes, yeah, because of the fog effects in that game, it's sometimes not entirely what you're going to want.
No.
Yeah, I'll look at that later. But yes, that's what we're doing next. Silent Hill 2. Probably
Yeah, can't
both of
wait for
them.
that.
Me neither.
Yeah, and I guess that brings us to the end of another episode of the Winner Is You podcast. If you liked what you heard, and even if you didn't, why not give our numbers a bump by subscribing to our podcast on your podcast feed of choice, or if you prefer to consume your podcast in a visual format, you can head on over to YouTube and search for A Winner Is You podcast, where you can subscribe to our YouTube channel. I don't think I ever say that subscribe properly without tripping over my tongue. If the podcast isn't enough for you, you can also follow us on the website formerly known as Twitter at WinnerIsYouPod, and you can even send us an email, tell us how wrong we are about our game and movie opinions by writing to winnerisyoupod@gmail.com. Also, Alex has not Twitter at SuperThrillix, and against my better judgment, I have made another Twitter account because it's just I like it. So I am super smiley. I'm back there, and do you know what? Actually, I think this is the way to do Twitter. Two things I've got to say. One is how fucking much I know people. I'm saying things that people know that Twitter is a sewer. But see, when you join Twitter without any algorithm, so to speak, without the year, it is disgusting. The amount of
I bet it is. Yeah,
the amount of literally people just getting shot and animal cruelty that just gets pumped to you on your feed these days is disgusting.
Wow. I did not. Yeah, I've never seen any of that.
I have. I'm trying my best to create an algorithm that is. I'm just not going to use Twitter for news or politics. So
Of course.
I'm just going to try and use games and rugby, and I'm just going to engage with those two things exclusively. And hopefully I'll just create an algorithm where I can just sort of exist in a happy bubble.
Yeah, always following and never for you as your feed.
Yes, exactly that. But yeah, that I have that. And we also have TikTok, so head over there, search for A Winner Is You if you wish. Alex, any housekeeping, or are we getting out of here?
Let's get out of here. It's lunchtime. I'm starving.
Hell yeah.
Let's watch a spooky movie each next time and have a discussion about that. Just pick whatever you want. Tell us about a spooky movie you've watched.
Okay, I'm going to do that. Okay.
I'm going to pick something obscure and then I'll come back with some thoughts.
Hell yeah. Where did you get your hoodie? That's a good hoodie. It looks like a good fit and a good quality hoodie.
It is a good fit. Insert coin.
Insert coin. I'm going to head over there.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say I'd not buy it because you've got it, but I just won't wear it when I'm in your company. It's fine.
Yeah, there's a Doomslayer logo somewhere on it as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I like that. And on that bombshell, hi, I've been David, he's been Alex, and we have been A Winner Is You, and I'm out.
Keep gaming.